Hey everybody, welcome back to the Good Death Experience, and I am your host, Shara, and today we're going to talk about death doula or hospice volunteer or death doula. Okay, so I want to quickly dive into this topic, and let's start with why. It's your why, right? Why would you want to be a volunteer, first of all, or why would you want to be a hospice volunteer for that nature, and why would you go so far as to becoming a death doula? So let's start with me, because I believe in just telling my story so you guys can get to know me, and as you get to know me, we can kind of get deeper into knowing you through the comments and maybe through some types of live streams and everything like that. So my why. Every time I tell this story, I feel weird about it because it's true. When I decided to volunteer, it was completely so not about me. It was really what I consider really selfish, but I was young at that time. I was pretty selfish. So I was kind of really about me and, making things work for me. I was going to school and I was getting my degree, and I wanted to get ahead of all the other students by having actual experience, right? So I figured, what's the best way to do that? Because we're all going to be applying for jobs in the similar places and organizations in the same field. So to be more competitive, I decided I should volunteer. So I went down to the university hospital to volunteer. I wanted to volunteer in administration because that was my background, healthcare administration. So when I went into the healthcare administration department, they were like, it's going to be a 6-month waiting period to get into this program. And I was like, 6 months? Like, I'm graduating in 6 months. I wanted to have like that experience on my resume, have that under my belt. So when I got out of school and I was applying for jobs, I would be able to just, get right in there and say I have experience. So that didn't work out. So I was walking out a little bit with my head hanging down, and I immediately heard, and I give this all to Spirit, and Holy Spirit, God, just gave me the message: don't give up, go volunteer for hospice. If you apply, you'll get in right away. It's not like there's a long line waiting to volunteer in hospice. And I was just really like, I paused for a minute before I got to my car, and I was like, like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not what I don't want to, like, no, isn't that, I was like, is hospice like, people die? Isn't that like death? Like, I was like, no, there's no way. I was like, no, not having it. And I kept walking to my car, and I heard it again, and I'm like, jeez. So I just shook it off. I got home, I could not shake it off. I kept thinking about what I wanted to do, and I kept thinking about the mission and what I was trying to achieve. So I went ahead and got on the website, and I started looking up, at the university hospice volunteer, and there it was right there. I was like, oh, hospice volunteer, wow. I was like, do I apply? So yes, I go ahead and submit my information. And yeah, I submitted my information, and it literally like within a few hours, I got a response back, and the next day I was in there. And I was like so scared. I was like, what am I doing? I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. What am I doing? Like, yeah, so I was just like, I knew my why. I wanted to get the experience, and I wanted to, have a better job, be more competitive, and, take care of my family. That was my mission at the time. And so I got into the training, and I completed it was 4 weeks of training for this hospice training. And I remember the day I was going to graduate from the training, and I went up to my hospice volunteer coordinator, and he was like, you ready? You ready to go out there and, see some patients and families? And I was just like, no, I'm not. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm really not. And he was like, all right, you're going to be okay. I was like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm going to be okay. Nobody's going to like die when I get there. He's like, you think somebody's going to die when you get there? I was like, I don't know. Like, You tell me. And he was like, well, he said, well, let's just think about it realistically. How often are you there with a patient? Like, you're going to be like 1-2 hours a week, right? It's like that's, what are the odds of someone, dying when you're there? He's like, I've been doing this for like 30 years. And I mean, like, I haven't seen this happen. Like, maybe once or twice, but it typically doesn't happen. You have nothing to worry about. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. I had this new set of confidence. And I was like, okay, I'm about to go, get geared up for this. They gave me my case, and I was ready to go. And I remember getting up to bed early, getting up the next day, getting familiar with the case, reading it over, And I remember getting in my car, driving there, and I remember that same voice that told me to sign up for hospice volunteer work. On my way there, I heard it again say, when you get there, this patient is going to die. And I was just like, what? I was like, no way. I know this is not going to happen because my volunteer coordinator told me it wasn't going to happen, right? He knows everything, right? And I was just like, whatever. Driving, and I'm just like, let me just get there. But by the time I got there, I pulled in my parking spot, and I was just like, dang, what if he's right? I was like, no. But I was in there in the moment of like just a little bit of fear, and I had to remember my why. Why am I here? Okay, you got to do this to better yourself, better your family, kids, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay. And then I saw the daughter waving me down to come in, and I was like, oh, shake it off. And literally, I got out of the car, I slammed the door, and as soon as I slammed the door, I heard it again. She's going to die when you get in there. And I was like, oh, okay, focus. So I'm like, hi, here I am, I'm your volunteer, and she's like, oh, nice to meet you, and I'm like, you too, and I saw her daughter. She's a young gal, she's like 35. She had a 4-year-old daughter, and I was like, oh, it was Halloween. She's like, I'm gonna take her trick or treating, and I was like, yay, okay, cool. Like, I'm just gonna take my laptop and I'm gonna work while you take your daughter out. And she's like, yeah, we won't be gone that long. She's like, well, come meet my mom. So she took me back to meet her mom. And it was really cool, but her mom couldn't communicate. She was pretty much, I would say, there was just no communication skills. I think she was, I don't want to diagnose or say what was exactly wrong with her, but she could not communicate. Let's leave it at that. But she told me that she knew I was there. She said, just touch her. She knows you're there. And I was able to touch her hand, introduce myself, let her know I was her volunteer, and I was going to be with her while her daughter stepped out for a little while. And then I went back to do my homework, and they went ahead and left and went trick-or-treating. So I got my laptop out, and I'm like, okay, well, let me just, start, doing my homework. And as I'm doing my homework, I hear it again. She's gonna die. She's gonna die. She's gonna die. She's gonna die. I'm like trying to focus. And then next thing you know, I hear this like really heavy breath. Just like this, just something I had never heard before. It's just like a. And I was like, what was that? And I heard she just passed. And I was like, what? No way. So, for all the hospice volunteers out here, this is what not to do. I was like, oh, she's fine. No, it's okay. Back to my laptop, started typing. I was just like, then I felt this gush of cold wind like swarm around me. It was like being in a really warm room from like 80 degrees, I'd say. And then the temperature just vastly dropped. It was like below zero cold. It was just a quick wind that swooshed around my chair. And it was so cold, and I could hear like, thank you. I was like, thank you. Who's thanking me? I'm just having all types of things happening with this experience. And so I said, I should get up and go check on her. After that was like, I should go check on her. But I didn't. I was like, point, she wasn't going anywhere. And she's in the bed, and I just was like, I don't know. But before I had time to think, the phone rang, and her daughter was like, "Hey, how's my mom?" I was like, "Oh, she's good. She's fine." And I was just like, yeah. She's like, "Well, I'll be right back. Maybe another 10 minutes or so." And I was like, "Okay, not a big deal. Yeah, we're fine. We're fine." And then as soon as I hung up the phone, I was like, "Okay, Sharon, you got to go check. You got to go check." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "My hospice volunteer coordinator told me no one's going to die when I'm there." I'm like, "Oh, man, this is..." And I was like, "Okay." And it seemed like the time was moving really fast, but I guess it was slow. I don't even know, because at the time I was sitting there trying to figure out, was I going to go check? I heard the door bust open, and this is her little 4-year-old running in with her little trick-or-treat candy. I'm like, "Oh, please get candy." And I'm like, I was about to go in there. I was like, "Oh, I didn't get to go in there before." I was like, "Oh, man." So I was like, "Okay." And then she's like, "I'm going back to sleep, my mom." And I was like, "Okay, okay, okay." And when she runs by, beelines right by me, and I'm just like, and next thing you know, it's just like, all I hear was screaming. "Ah!" I was like, "Oh my God, what is happening?" And I was just like, my heart just sunk, because I just knew her mother had transitioned. And just remember, this is the first time volunteer, so I'm telling you guys this, because I had to learn this stuff. Yeah, so I knew, first thing I need to do, mom's freaking out, screaming. So, of course, what does the 4-year-old do? She's like trying to figure out why mom's screaming. So she goes in to grab mom, and and I'm like, "Oh no, let me go grab her." And I'm holding baby, and I'm rocking her. It's okay, and mom is talking to her mom like, why did you wait till she was so upset that her mother had waited till she was gone to transition. She's like, "I knew you were gonna do this. I knew you were gonna go when I left. I didn't want to leave." And she was just running around the apartment yelling, "I knew she was gonna do this. I didn't even want to go trick or treating." And she was saying that the care team had told her that her mom had more time, and so she didn't. She was really worried about leaving, but she did anyway against her own better judgment. And it was just a lot going on. And I was just like, "Okay, what do I do?" I comfort, I comfort, and then I call. I get a call. And I was like, "Look, I don't call 911, right? You don't call 911, right?" She was DNR. She was not to be resuscitated. I was supposed to call my hospice coordinator so someone can come out. And I did that, and of course they showed up to check on her mom and to pronounce her and everything else that takes place. I was still holding the baby, and I was trying to comfort her daughter, and she had to come to terms with the fact that maybe her mother wanted to be alone when she passed, because she knew in her gut she felt her mother was going to transition when she left, and that she did. So she said she was upset with herself that she didn't trust her own gut and stick around. She just thought to just go ahead and go, because she thought that she had more time. But yeah, so we had a conversation about that, and we was able to just get her to find some peace with that and comfort, just through letting her get her thoughts out, and just me being a listener, which is one of the roles at hospice volunteer. You're listening. There was really nothing I could say at that time, but being a peaceful presence and listening was comforting enough. She was able to find her own answers and her own peace by me just being that sounding board. But yeah, so for me, it was like, it was a quite an evening, and I remember getting a call the next day from my hospice coordinator, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, hey, I'm sorry this happened to you. Do you need a break?" And I was like, I don't need a break, because if you give me a break, I don't think I'll ever come back. I was just like, no. Just give me the next case. I want to go on the next case right now. So I got to keep it moving, right? So that was the thing, keep it moving. So this is a whole nother story, but needless to say, this happened to me 3 more times. Yes. People wouldn't even believe it. Exact same thing happened 3 more times. But at that point, I just took it as a sign that I'm in the right field. I'm on the right path. This is something I'm supposed to be doing. Let me see where it takes me. So, back to the topic. The topic is hospice volunteer versus death doula, or death doula. Like, how do you decide? So for me, at that time, I decided to do my volunteer work because it was helping me towards my educational goals. And gosh, that was so long ago. That was like close to 20 years ago. Maybe like 18. But so it for me, it naturally transitioned because after just getting through the process of initially being afraid to realizing that I was on my right path, to really loving the work and falling in love with the work, falling in love with the people on my journey, just being, knowing that this was my purpose, this is something I was destined to do. This was way before even death doulas were really mainstream. The pandemic kind of pushed all of that into the forefront line right now. But yeah, so I remember being a volunteer one time, and I would volunteer so much. I would work 8 hours a day, then I'd volunteer, and I'd be like, man, it'd be great if I could just do this for like a career and get paid to do this. I remember going to my volunteer coordinator one time, and I was like, I spent 8 hours at work, not doing work that I like my work, but it wasn't work that I loved. And I was like, man, I would just love to do this all day. Like, how do I find a way to get paid for this? He's like, he's like, I don't know. He's like, you got to figure it out. If you love it, you can figure it out. And I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way. This was like 15, 16 years ago. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way. I was coming up with all kind of creative ideas. I was like, okay, maybe if I go to large organizations and ask them to donate to the hospices, and then maybe they'll be able to take some of that money and to pay the volunteers, and then eventually I'll be able to quit my job and just, I guess it wouldn't be volunteer work anymore if you're getting paid, right? But anyway, I was trying to be creative, but fast forward, your why. So decide your why you want to volunteer for hospice, or why you want to volunteer at all for any organization. Okay, so being a death doula, I think for me it was a natural transition to go from being a hospice volunteer to a death doula, because I had volunteered for so long. Actually, I am still a volunteer, just will say that, because I am a volunteer now with a hospice that has a pediatric part to it. So I didn't get in all my years of experience, I didn't get the time or chance to work with peds. So I'm getting the opportunity to work with peds through volunteering through this organization. So that's one of the reasons why I'm still volunteering, to explore working with children and families. So yeah, back to my story. I got a lot of thoughts going through my head. So, but anyway, it was a natural transition for me to go into the death doula course, because I had been volunteering for so long. And one of the things that I want to talk about with the death doula and the volunteer, the difference is, of course, the death doula, we provide, non-medical support to families and our clients, which are patients. We would be able to do anything like, whether they need spiritual support, emotional support, practical support, any type of, running errands, whatever the family needs, whatever the patient needs, you're able to do. One of the things about being a doula, you work for yourself. A lot of organizations, I should say, are starting to hire doulas at this point, but for the most part, most death doulas are independent, and you pretty much work for yourself. And of course, that's different than being a hospice volunteer. You pretty much work with the hospice or hospital organization that you're affiliated with. And for being a volunteer, of course, you follow the organization's policies and rules as a volunteer. As a death doula, you tend to be independent. You have your own rules. You have your own boundaries, policies, and ethics and things that you create for yourself as a sole proprietor or a business if you start a business. My business is a LLC in the state of Florida. Okay, so what else? I got a little bored here, so I'm looking and see if I forget something because sometimes it's so much. Yeah, so I said, like again, you're independent as a death doula. You have your own boundaries, ethics, practices, whatever you contract between you and that client and that family. You guys negotiate those terms. One of the other differences is that you can typically, when you're volunteering for a hospice or organization for a patient and that family, it's pretty much just during the time that patient is being serviced during that hospice. So it's basically just during that time. And what I mean by, I'm trying to say, what I mean is when you're a death doula, you could pretty much be working for a client at any point. That could be, let's say, immediately upon diagnosis of a chronic illness at a point when they need support. They're not necessarily on hospice or receiving hospice services. So you could be with them well before they become a hospice patient, and you can be with the family after the patient has transitioned. So we're talking about before hospice, we're talking about during, and we're talking about after the death of the patient. So you're able to pretty much define your own timeline when you're working with the patient and the family versus with your volunteering. You're typically just with that patient and family during the time that they're receiving hospice services. So that's why it's hospice volunteer. So, what else? Well, you're assigned patients through the hospice organization. So you don't have to necessarily look for your own clients. As a death doula, we are independent and we seek our own clients and families by marketing our services. We can actually contact different healthcare organizations, hospices, and let them know about our services. We can work with them, alongside them, not, instead of them. One of the things we do is we want to educate that we don't replace hospice volunteers, we don't replace any healthcare providers. We are non-medical, so what we do is add an additional layer of support to the care services that the family already has and the patient already has. So we're just an additional layer of support. And a lot of times when people are dealing with someone end of life, they really need that additional layer of support. It usually is coming from another family member or friends. So having a death doula as another person to help support the family is very beneficial. So yeah, what else? Yeah, so those, I'll stop there on those. I don't want to make this too long. Those are some of the differences about hospice volunteer, death doula. Basically, you can do either or at this point. Sometimes people want to just do the hospice volunteer work just to kind of see if they even want to work in the, death care industry. Volunteering is a good way to decide if you really want to do that. But if you're a caregiver already, you probably don't need to do that. Or if you cared for a loved one, you probably understand that you don't need to necessarily do that. So you may want to just go straight to being a death doula and take a course. And, or you can take a course if you haven't worked as a caregiver or you haven't taken care of someone at end of life. You can also take a course. And a lot of the courses don't have practical experience. So what you can do is you can go ahead and volunteer while you're taking the course, which is what I recommend. I have a course that I do, but I always recommend that the students that I'm mentoring and I'm putting through my death doula course, I recommend that they volunteer at their local hospice to get that practical experience. And if I'm actually working with a client and a family while they're in my course, I make arrangements for them to be able to go with me to a client a couple times to be able to shadow me as a mentor and be able to work with, have some practical experience working with patients and family. So yes, good to take a volunteer if you plan on being a death doula, and that's your ultimate end goal. Okay, so what else? Sorry, look at my board. That's it. Okay, that's it. Yeah, we got 25 minutes. Let me start wrapping this up. So what I'm going to do is, plug myself real quick. Like and subscribe. Subscribe. I don't think subscribers even matter. I'm trying to learn this whole YouTube thing. It's all about views and, just trying to, and I'm not trying to say it's all about views because to me it's about education, but once again, I would love to do something that I love to do full time. So if there's any way I can get this channel to have, more views by spreading more education, by getting more likes, and yeah, that'd be great because I can cut back on some of the other stuff I can do and I can see more patients, I can help more families, and I can teach more death doulas. Okay, so I got quite a few links. I got end-of-life resources. I got a death doula world blog. I have a fundraiser down there. I have a donation link down there. I have a link to my courses. I have tons of links. Just check them all out. And what else? Yep, that's it. I'm trying to stay under 30 minutes here. I'm trying to find my rhythm too, you guys. So bear with me. This is going to be a learning experience for me. I definitely need to get equipment together. This camera is too fuzzy for me. I'm like, but you can hear me. What else? My area, I haven't really found like my great area where I'm going to sit at in my place. I would like to have like a plant back here or something. I don't know. Just make it more, nice. I don't know. We got a little ways to go. But I'm going to talk about stuff that's educational. I'm going to talk about stuff that's funny. I'm just going to talk too much sometimes. I'm going to do a lot. So, because I want you guys to really get to know me. I want to talk about death. I want to normalize the conversation. I want us to be able to talk about this. I want to talk about, my next show, I'm talking about my end-of-life wishes. So that's my next show. That's probably going to be tomorrow. I'm trying to do a show a day. I'm going to talk about my end-of-life wishes, what they are, who knows about them, and the whole, well, I ain't the whole world, but whoever watches my video is going to know about them. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. That's going to be good, my end-of-life wishes. So, yeah, that'll be good because it'll probably get everyone to think about what their end-of-life wishes are and who knows them and who to tell. And I'm going to talk about the GDE survey, which is a survey that's on my website that you can take. There's a link down in the description. Take it and get you a free planner. You can download it, take the survey, you can download the planner, and it's a journal too. So you can just, it's a PDF, it's fillable, it's digital, and just browse through it, ask yourself the questions, and every now and then write something in it till you get it filled out. But the ultimate goal is to get it filled out so you can have a GDE plan, a good death experience plan for you and your loved ones. The last thing we want is for something to happen to one of us and our loved ones do not know what to do. There's a lot of that happening right now. We need to have more good death experiences for our loved ones. And that comes with proactive planning. Okay? All right. Okay. I'm going to go. Thank you. Bye.